What is going on, fight fans? So welcome back to the channel. We always have to do these with the pay-per-view fights, especially the super big ones. We have to do our pay-per-view predictions, but remember that I am super accurate with these bad boys. Now, it doesn't mean that I can't be wrong, but my analytical data dump, where I put everything together and extrapolate a number based off of that previous data that's available to everybody, it tends to hit the mark. I predicted that Ryan Garcia and Tank, based off of viewership numbers with social media and social media engagement, was going to hit over 1 million pay-per-view when everyone told me that that was crazy. I think this fight does over 1 million pay-per-view buys, and I think it can help set a precedent to get the big fight done. I also predicted the Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence pay-per-view numbers pretty accurately looking at data. Now, what kind of data do I use to make these predictions? It's basically all of the media postings or media videos or things that are out there in social media as a whole involving both fighters fighting each other, not just both fighters separately or based off of something else, both fighters fighting each other. Now, for example, one of the press conferences had 1 million views, but the one that had 1 million views was the whole Oscar De La Hoya and Canelo Alvarez having to be separated by a security guard. And I'm also looking at the primary channels as well. So I'm looking at the PBC channel. We don't have Showtime, which made it much easier to do this, by the way. We don't have Showtime because with Showtime, we could always look at the numbers and it was very, very close to that accurate number. We have the PBC channel, having Oscar De La Hoya and Canelo have issues. Now, you could say to yourself, well, there's 1 million views on a press conference. And you're 100% right. That is pretty strong. 1 million views on the press conference is pretty strong. But then the weigh-in doesn't hit that number. Other things involving the press conference doesn't hit that number. So there is a little bit of sensationalism tied to the whole Oscar De La Hoya, Canelo Alvarez, debacle, right? So that is an anomaly because there has to be a certain level of consistency for me to see traction that will flow in to the purchasing power of the pay-per-view. Now, what do I look at? The 24/7s or the all access episodes are very, very telling. Those are going to key you into the interest of the fight. And there's some good numbers for the gloves off. I think this is what PBC does. They do the gloves off, which is kind of their all access, the version of all access for the PBC. And it has over 1 million views for both, for episode 1 and episode 2. Now, that's a super interesting metric, right? Because if we look at Ryan Garcia versus Devin Haney, that did about 500-something thousand on average. But this did around 1 million on average. We also have to take into account that this could be doing these numbers because it's a Mexican fighter versus another Mexican fighter. Jaime Munguia is undefeated. That brings traction for a lot of casual fans, believe it or not, because when they don't know a fighter, what they do is they look at the records. And when they look at the records, they see, oh, this person is undefeated. So that creates interest. It makes it seem like he's a much more difficult threat than he actually is, just simply based off of the simplicity of looking at his stats. So with that understanding that it did over 1 million, in both of the all access 24/7 gloves off episodes, it is creating a little bit of good momentum going in. My prediction for this fight between Canelo and Jaime Munguia is going to be from around 350,000 to about 650,000 pay-per-view buys. Now, I know that is a large gap. I know that is a really large gap. However, you have to take into account that there's some newness here, because we have to see how it works when there isn't that Showtime brand behind it. Believe it or not, even though PBC is running this, they're doing it through Amazon Prime, and that can have an effect on pay-per-view numbers. So until we can get extrapolated data that coincides with the data that we're looking at, and then we can start to cross-reference this in the future, we won't know for sure. So my gaps are going to be slightly larger than normal. Normally I would just do like a gap of like around 100,000 views, but this needs a bigger gap because we need to see, do these 1 million views for the All Access episodes translate the same way 1 million views for Showtime All Access, the actual All Access episodes do? Because the brand of Showtime is behind that. Even when you purchase the pay-per-view, the brand of Showtime is behind that, and purchasing habits are behind purchasing a Showtime boxing pay-per-view event that was made popular by them signing Floyd Mayweather and making Showtime at the time the most popular location to watch boxing. So that is my prediction: 350,000 to 650,000 pay-per-view buys. It's not going to top Tank versus Ryan Garcia, but we also have to see what Tank is going to do versus Frank Martin. This Prime Video thing is the X factor. We need to find out, what does this mean in terms of conversion for the audience to actually watch the pay-per-view. If Canelo somehow gets really good numbers, then there is a positive swing going into all of these fights moving forward. But if he doesn't, it could spell impending doom. Not impending doom, but it could be a really hard blow to the PBC brand as a whole. We're just gonna have to wait and see what happened. But an interesting thing is, I predicted for Ryan Garcia versus Devin Haney to do somewhere in the ballpark of 200,000 to about 300,000 pay-per-view buys, and we haven't heard the numbers yet. This is another thing that's going to be maybe commonplace because it's these streaming services, and it's a different kind of rule set for these streaming services. If the numbers aren't good, they might not make them public. It's not like cable providers in the way that worked with Showtime. The numbers always went public no matter what. Now we don't have that luxury with the numbers just going public. Sometimes it's like there's like these app things where they're controlling the numbers, and if they don't want it to go out, it just doesn't go out. Normally within a week, we already know about the pay-per-view numbers. We haven't heard anything from the Ryan Garcia versus Devin Haney event. We have heard zero things from that in terms of pay-per-views. I don't know if Amazon Prime is going to fall into the same bucket because of, as I've always told you guys, boxing is more politics than it is actually boxing. So if the numbers are low and they want to keep the notion that Canelo is a top tier, he could sell pay-per-views, they might keep it on the hush hush, but we'll have to wait and see. Again, my prediction is anywhere from 350,000 to 650,000, looking at not just the numbers of the viewership, but also the engagement of those pay-per-views. That's important as well. And remember, guys, just because something's getting millions of views does not mean that it will convert to 1 million paid pay-per-view viewers. There's going to be people that's going to legally stream it. There's going to be people that just don't really care to see it at all, but love to see all the hype stuff. That's always there. And there's going to be casuals that just forget. They just forget about the fight because they don't pay attention to boxing like that. So let's see what happens. Let me know what you guys think. If you want my breakdown on the fight and what I thought about the fight, I will have that right here. You can go ahead and click there and it'll take you right to the breakdown that I did right after the fight ended. Until the next one, guys, peace out.